Thanks for checking out today's episode of The Experience Curve, where we explore the personal journeys of accomplished individuals, breaking down the steps they took to get where they are, which I hope just might inspire you on your own path forward. On today's show, I am joined by Bridget Murphy of Envision Promotions. And in this episode, we will uncover how early experiences can lay the groundwork for entrepreneurial success, the power of tapping into past colleagues for support and guidance, challenging the notion that big city living is a prerequisite for business success, and how time with family can be the biggest benefit of entrepreneurship. And Bridget's path from corporate life to founding Envision Promotions highlights her transformative impact on strategic partnership marketing, with a seamless transition from corporate life to the helm of a successful marketing agency. Bridget's story is a testament to her visionary leadership and entrepreneurial acumen. Whether you're starting your own venture or intrigued by strategic marketing, this episode equips you with the insights to succeed. Good afternoon, Bridget. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to being on Experience Curve podcast. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. But for you, right, like going back to 12 years old, like you started out with this like paper route. How did that experience sort of influence like your work ethic? Or I don't even know if you were thinking about entrepreneurship at that age, but how do you think just taking that on at that age, most 12-year-olds I know, at least nowadays, just want to sit in front of TikTok or whatever, that you had, went out there and did it. How do you think that influenced your career going forward?
That's a great question. At 12, I probably, like most kids, I really wanted some cool clothes, right? I'm the upper middle of six kids. I grew up in a really wonderful neighborhood, but because of six kids, we did not have a lot. I remember at 12 asking my parents for new shoes, and I wanted the cool new jacket, like all my friends at school. And my dad said, sort of off the cuff, when you get your own job, you can buy your own clothes. And so at 12, I remember finding an ad for a paper route. And I called and said, I didn't lie. I said it was Joe O'Connor. And my middle name is Josephine, and my maiden name is O'Connor. So I got the job. I interviewed. I completely sold myself. And then I told my parents that I landed this position where it was like a 4-mile walk every morning, 7 days a week, delivering papers. And my dad got up with me every morning for the first year and delivered papers with me. I loved it. I mean, I had my own cash. I could buy my own stuff. I could help my friends out. I could help my siblings out. I think for me, I felt I loved the responsibility. Like I took it very seriously. It really did sort of start that love of work. I am inherently a worker bee. I enjoy it. It is part of who I am. I like being busy. And that paper route's really what kickstarted it. And I've worked ever since. I've had some job since I was 12.
Yeah, because you kind of, I mean, from there, I'm assuming, right? You keep that, you go into high school, college, you start working, right? Because your background, you work for some pretty big corporations, right? In New York City. What was the sort of path from high school into working with these big, corporations?
Well, it wasn't by accident. When I graduated college, I had a psychology and business degree. And I had all of these friends who were really interested in, they wanted this very specific job or a specific job title or wanted to work for a certain company. I wanted to go to a big city. I don't know what it was about a big city that really attracted me. So I did. I started interviewing in Manhattan and I landed a job and I slept in someone's loft. Started my career path in Manhattan. I was lucky enough to end up at Disney, where I really started to cut my teeth on sales and climbed the corporate ladder. And that's really where I met some of my favorite people. And it allowed me to go from sales to business development to running a sales team and ended up evolving into what Envision Promotions eventually. Essentially, what happened was working in Manhattan, I met this really hot guy, and he got a job in Columbus, Ohio, which is where I'm from, with the Columbus Blue Jackets, which is the national hockey team here. And I came back to Columbus after living in Manhattan for almost a decade, working for huge entertainment companies like Disney and Fox. When I came back to Columbus, I really didn't fit. It was a sort of a fish out of water scenario. I worked at a couple agencies here, and I loved the agencies, but I didn't connect with the people as well. I was so accustomed to being on a plane and traveling and working on these huge initiatives. And my girlfriends in Manhattan just kept poking me saying, well, why don't you just start your own? Like, it was a really easy thing to do.
Yeah, and that, well, easy, I think, depending on the person. Like, I would probably be scared at that point to be like, okay, how do I start my own company? And you, who knows, right? Having that paper route in the beginning and the work ethic that was sort of instilled in you, kind of being a go-getter and just kind of moving up the ranks, like you said. Did you feel any sort of anxiety about that, or maybe or like the motivation maybe that kind of made you, hey, I'm going to take this leap and start Envision?
Yeah, honestly, if the truth be told, I was pregnant with my daughter. I was working at a company. I didn't fit. I was pregnant with my daughter, and I couldn't see my future working at a company and being removed as a parent or as a mom for an organization that I just really wasn't passionate about. So I ended up starting Envision Promotions and was able to essentially be a mom first. When I started Envision, my goal really was to supplement my income so I could stay at home. But I quickly realized, like I said before, I'm a worker bee. I really enjoy working, and I think honestly, working for me makes me a better mom. If I stayed at home all day long, I'm not sure I would be the same parent that I am when I'm able to go to work and do fun things and use my creative brain and talk to lots of people and get this energy from other people and putting these really magnificent programs together. Then I can go home and be a really good mom. So when I started Envision, it was primarily because of my daughter.
Wow, well, that's very cute. That's a great story. I mean, I didn't know that, and that's, again, like, that just says a lot about your characters. Obviously, you're a very very warm person, and to me, that's just like a very sweet story, and obviously it paid off, right? So when you kind of get the company, you're like, I'm going to go for it. Is it just you as a solo operation, or are you saying at this point, I need to have people with me? Whether it's teammates or even a mentor at the beginning.
So that's a great question. When I started Envision, the goal was really just to supplement my income, to work out of my house for a while until my daughter was old enough to go to school, and then I figured I would either go back to corporate America or I could grow Envision. That was sort of my thought process, and I quickly realized I'm not very good at a lot of things. One of them is bookkeeping. Like, no one should hire me to keep books, right? I've learned a lot, and I can do a lot on my own, but that was the first person I hired for Envision, was a bookkeeper, and it was the best money I ever spent. It got me out of the weeds. Gave me so much of my time back, and then I quickly realized I could hire people who know how to do those jobs a lot more effectively than me. And so I did start to surround myself with a lot of really smart business owners in Columbus that offered me unbelievable advice and also the support you need, because it's scary. It's scary doing it on your own. And having someone champion you, and tell you that you can do it and that they believe in you and they think you have a great idea really helps you take that leap. And it might be a teeny leap. Like, hiring a bookkeeper for me was huge. It was, it was really expensive. It was the same amount as paying for my kids to go to daycare. So it was really in the beginning when you're, weighing out those options of hire, do not hire, or how to take those first initial steps. It really helps to talk to someone who's done it before. It helped me a lot.
Yeah, I would imagine, or you tell me, when you're starting this and you're kind of doing this again, supplementing. I'm assuming you have some clients, but is there a moment where you're like, I know I need to sort of have this many clients or this much revenue coming in if I'm going to not go back to corporate? Or maybe like there was a point where you realized, hey, I'm there's a success because of a financial number I'm hitting, or just some sort of a partnership that you're like, okay, I know I'm going to get more business from working with this brand or whatever it might be. Was there that kind of moment, or did you just kind of take it as you went and said, I'm just going to go for it, if it's a success or it's not, I'm just going to do it regardless?
Well, I don't think it was I would do it regardless. I think there was a couple points in working, starting Envision and starting to do these kinds of partnerships. Initially, I was doing it where I would secure a partner and I would do a program for them. So they would hire me to get exposure within a specific CPG or entertainment. Envision, having a Disney background, we speak mom very fluently. So immediately we started working with, cereals and juice boxes and strollers and a lot of CPG companies. And then we also realized that coming from Disney, entertainment was big, right? When I say entertainment, I mean like board games and picture books and movies and audio and concerts. That transcended into video games really quickly. So that's where we've been our niche. And we got one client that was an incredible game. And one of the biggest promotions that we did for them was with Post Cereal. We went into Post, we pitched Post, and the goal was for the client, the big win was getting on one box of cereal, whether it be a sugar cereal brand, who cares? That was a huge win because we could put content on the package, on the physical space. We could also put coupons on there. And then Post had Postopia at the time, which was their digital arm, and then encourage video game play. We won every single box of Post cereal. We were the first agency to ever land that. It was 21 million boxes of cereal. And it was everything from sugar cereal all the way to brand cereal because the content resonated with all the consumers. It was 9 to 92. So we had unique content on every box, but it was different on every brand. It was probably one of the coolest things because I remember pushing my kids in the cart down the aisle of a grocery store. And, Post owns like such a major component of the grocery, the cereal aisle. And it was just program after program that we had secured. And that's when I kind of knew that, for one, I needed to price myself differently. and two, I was like, this is something that can stand alone. I don't, and then I started realizing that I probably couldn't get paid at a job in Columbus, making the same money that I was making and making at Envision. So both of those things, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea is okay. I'm landing these huge partnerships. Are you working with clients that you knew previously, or are you kind of doing a little bit of both? Like, how are you coming up with, okay, I need to find new partnerships, new brands? Is that something you were doing yourself, or is that when at this point you're bringing on different teammates to help you?
So in the inception, it was capitalizing on my relationships with my New York friends. So one of my girlfriends that was at Disney went to Nickelodeon. She was one of my first clients. And I mean, think about that. When you're starting a company, the very first client that you sign is Nickelodeon. It was this huge deal too. We put together a promotion between a Nickelodeon and McDonald's. And we included the game inside the Nickelodeon magazine. So every Nickelodeon magazine had our game content as an added, purchase with that magazine. It was incredible. But I remember starting Envision, when I went to sell her, I asked her for a meeting, and I had just had my daughter, and I booked the ticket. I hadn't even closed my LLC yet. Right. So I wasn't real. It was in my head. I was like, I can do this. I think it's something. I had a micro business plan that I had handwritten. And so I called her up and I was like, I want to come in and pitch you. I think there's something that we could work together. And so I got on a plane with my breast pump and I flew to New York, and I took her out to one of our favorite restaurants. I did this whole presentation where I'm like, I don't have much overhead, and my capabilities, and I could win this business, and I can put it all together for you. And she's like, Bridget, why'd you get on a plane? Of course I'm going to give you the business. And I remember crying all the way in the cab back to JFK, and then flying home. And then I booked my LLC, and that was my very first client was Nickelodeon. I just remember that being so monumental. And I was like, okay, this is something real, and I can turn this into something. And then she left and went to Cranium Games and took me with her. And so Cranium Games was the company that really put Envision on the maps because we won Post Cereal. We had Frito-Lay, Burger King, Pizza Hut. I mean, that's really what got us in front of a bunch of really cool restaurants and sort of made a name for ourselves. And to answer your questions, that's really how we won more business. Is we were out pitching all these companies on behalf of Cranium and Nickelodeon, and we were winning business with them and converting them into clients. That's how Envision started, and that's how we continue to grow. Now what we're doing is trying to really promote the campaigns that we're currently working on to entice other brands to come and visit us and check us out and see what we're doing.
Okay, got it, got it. So for people listening, you talked about, reaching so many millions of boxes of cereal. What would that be like? What you would consider like a home run marketing partnership, or like how do you know where? Okay, everything's clicking, everyone's getting value. Like what would constitute that for people listening in your world at Envision, for the brand, for the entertainment property?
So I think there's two ways to answer that. The first one on the behalf of the client, which is a home run, is making sure we're hitting their KPIs and goals, right? So for Cranium Games, it was the exposure and also establishing that credibility with a larger brand. So often our clients are a smaller company looking to establish that credibility and gain that exposure by partnering with a brand that talks to the consumer that they want, right? So we jokingly refer to ourselves as a dating service for large corporations. Really, we're a dating service for the corporation's audience, right? If the audiences match, the magic happens, right? I think for us, what we consider a home run is when all the partners are on the same page. And we have created a process that really makes it easy for that to happen. So we have it's going to sound pitchy, but there's a reason for it. We have what we call our immersion session, and we dive deep into an organization's data. So we want to know who their consumer is, like culturally, what their values are, because then we can find partners that really resonate with their consumer. And we can find ways to bring them together so that the two partners both win. And we do that because when we get everyone together, we make sure that it's very transparent. All the partners are in the same room. We want to make sure that they all know that we're talking to this particular consumer, and then everyone can agree on that particular initiative. If we can do that and everyone's on the same page, brands bring in all these really cool new options and things that they're working on down the pipeline, and concert series that we haven't even discussed before. And we can do this and we can do that. And we have this new technology and we can embed this into the technology. And then it becomes more and more of a true partnership where both brands are winning, right? Both brands are really getting something out of it. It can never be purely equal because one brand's always bigger than another. But it can be we always ask that both partners be very generous. If you're coming into it from that kind of a perspective where it's a true partnership and both brands win, everyone in the room becomes more and more generous and they become more of a team. It's very cohesive. And that's what I consider a home run, is when both brands win and it elevates itself.
Yeah, because for years I worked in product placement, like at New Line, like I told you. So that was always a thing where you're like, okay, get these deals together, and on our end, you're hoping like, oh, I hope the movie's a success, because now you got this brand that's like like physically buying in, and then the movie comes out, and you're like, oh wait, what if no one sees this? So you're kind of like, that's the fear for us, or maybe yourself. I don't know if that ever hit you, but yeah, you're like, oh no, like, oh, it's tracking poorly. And you're like, this brand is in for so much, so you kind of get that kind of nervous feeling. But all you can do is put that together. You're not responsible for the marketing. You're not responsible for, right? You did the deal, and that what made sense based on the property they wanted to be aligned with. So that's what always freaked us out.
The nice thing about doing some of the programs is we tend to start with a test. So it's never like, well, I should not say that. I mean, obviously the Post cereal is a perfect example, right? There's no test there. That's 21 million boxes of cereal that are printed and the coupons there, like we're going forward. But in most instances, there's ways we can pivot. So if there is an instance where we're in a movie, in the movie tanks, like there's always a way to try and catch that from the back end, or repivot with that organization if you had a good working relationship, so that there's another add-on that we can make it so, again, both partners win. But yeah.
So then you have like almost like a consolation, like.
I mean, if you have to, but like you said, you're not always in control of everything, but you can control enough of it.
Yeah. It's not like the eyeballs are there for a brand like Post, so it's not like you're right. You're getting out there. And what about like from time to time? Not us so much in the department I was in, but for promotions and stuff like that, I would hear outside agencies. And when I was like young and I had just gotten started, I thought Oh, and everyone in this office of this promotions department, they're all doing the promotions. Like they're brainstorming. And I was like, and someone said at one point, oh, like such and such agency. And I'm like, what does that mean? And they're like, yeah, the agency that's kind of ideation. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, aren't you all coming up with that? So it kind of hit me at that time that a lot of agencies will use agencies right. Is that something that you do, or have you found success with that? Or is that not been a need?
No, that's a great question. It's funny. I've been doing more and more speaking around partnerships in general. And I often get a question where they're like, do you partner with anybody? And in the beginning, really, the answer was no. Until later, when I realized my clients trust me and they trust our organization. And when they had a question about, is there a PR agency who can design this microsite? How can we capitalize on, creating a game around it? And we had those relationships, so we would make recommendations to these other agencies. And it wasn't until later that we were like, why aren't we partnering together? So now we have a partnership arrangement with a lot of different agencies where we everything from data analytics, where we hire agencies that do a lot of the initial immersion sessions for us, where we take data from our clients and we run it through their programs so we can find out who their target demographic is, at a cultural level or target demographic, whatever we need from them. And so we've started partnering with them. We now do pitches together. We promote them as one of our trusted partners, and they do the same thing. So when I do speaking engagements around this, it's you can do this at a very granular level. Even if you're the smallest business, you can find organizations that align with yours, right? If you're an accountant, you can partner with other companies that speak to the same companies and start to promote one another. It's a great way to generate business. And it's also a great way to find true trusted partners that you can capitalize on in your work environment. But I really believe in partnerships across the board. I do both in work and what we do, and also in how we do it.
Yeah, I think that's cool because you can't expect an agency to be like an expert in every single aspect. And there are agencies that will just specialize in the one thing, like maybe it's you said data collect, whatever it might be. They specialize in that. So it's like, why would you not want like that? We've kind of vetted them, but we also, right? Like we're not an expert at that either. So why don't we just give you the best service possible? So I think that's, a no brainer to me, but
No, and it expands your offerings too. We now have a different relationship with our clients where, like I said in the beginning, we did, programs. We would do one program, and now we have more of a retainer relationship. And it really enhances the overall relationship long term with a client when you have other agencies that you can make recommendations to and work really well and closely with. So you're 100% right.
yeah, and well, you did touch on a little bit when you said speaking engagements. I did want to ask you about that because that's what a lot of entrepreneurs do, and it's great for personal branding. It's great for finding new business. How do you sort of make the most of your speaking engagements?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. I didn't start doing speaking engagements until probably the past last couple of years, and it was a really slow burn. I am not really comfortable. I wasn't comfortable in the beginning, so I started out really slow. I was doing podcasts, and then I started sitting on panels, and then I honed my message so that I could start doing speaking engagements. And what's interesting is you do one really unique speaking engagement, and customers find you, where typically we are out pitching other organizations, and that was our business model in order to get new clients. And it has now shifted to more of a personal brand, but it doesn't come naturally. It's one of those things that you have to grow over time. And now we're trying to be really smart in how we use the content from speaking engagements to educate, to offer services, to provide content, but also to motivate and excite people about what we do, and just about partnerships in general. So we've been really working on how to capitalize on the speaking engagements, but it was not intentional at first. It sort of like evolved over time.
Yeah, well, I mean, your story's great, so I can imagine, and you have a great personality as well. So I think that it does make sense for you to kind of get into that. So I can imagine it's gonna continue to do well for you. I believe one of your topics is about AI.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like how do you see AI working in like your world? Like your website's cool. Like people listening, you can go to Envision, you can kind of like see all these examples of these cool deals you put together, which I thought was awesome because I'm kind of a geek for that for my past and product placement. That's why I wanted to talk to you too. But like how do you see AI coming into your world?
So you're geeking out about my website, and I am geeking about it about AI. I mean, it is so cool how it's transforming business in general. So, like out of the gate, you see AI helping a lot of things in like the supply chain, right? You're hearing about autonomous delivery and transparency in terms of transportation. But what we're finding in terms of the evolution of partnerships is there's so many really cool applications for AI. For one, there's transparency. So you can track now. When we started, we did a bunch of different sweepstakes, and so many people would say, "No one wins the sweepstakes. That's no one wins the sweepstakes." And now we can show them, right? Out of all these millions of registered users, this winner is the person that won, and you can see how the whole thing transcended, and then you can track the prize, right? So you can see them going on their trip, or we've given away, I mean, lifetime supply of tennis shoes and toys and games over the years. And it's such a fun way to interact with your consumer. But if there's no trust in whether or not it's actually taking place, it's really hard to execute, right? And now you can, all of that is trackable, right? All of that data is available. And in terms of promotions, like there's intelligent packaging. Like we are now trying out different things where before, with some of the programs that we did, we were executed in store. So for example, Walmart, we would actually have a physical person go in and sticker the units on a display case with the QR code for a particular promotion, because we could not figure out how to adhere that in the process of packaging, right? So in a huge organization, when they're manufacturing it overseas, we couldn't tell which boxes were going to Walmart. So we would have to wait until they were delivered, and then we would go in and manually sticker them. Now we can, months in advance, we know exactly how many packages, and the QR codes are the right ones for Walmart and white ones for Target, and nothing gets mixed up. All of that's it's relatively new and fresh. Now what they were seeing is there's no sticker. There's edible QR codes on fruit. So think about that. You can use your QR code on food, and it's edible and it's healthy. It wouldn't hurt the consumer. Well, before, now, you all the waste of having to peel it off, or just all the added cost of having to adhere it. And there's so many cool things that are happening with AI that we're constantly trying to track and speak on, but it's changing so rapidly. I love it. I geek out on all this kinds of stuff with packaging, and there's virtual agents, that track all of the packages. Now you're speaking to a bot rather than speaking to a human. But I think all of that is really powerful. And if it's used effectively, I think it can really make partnerships evolve for the better, especially for the consumer. I think the consumer experience is going to be so much more exciting and cost effective, and the programs can be so much more transparent. So you actually can see how the program's being executed and who the winner is and what you're getting and how it's working. I think there's a lot of good that can happen with AI and partnerships.
Yeah, I think people get scared about AI, obviously, because jobs and right, who knows where it's going to go. But the efficiency that it is creating for a lot of industries is pretty fascinating because, like you said, how fast this technology moves, and what was there last year is like light years ahead next year, and staying on top of it, which I believe is for you, someone like yourself, is smart. Because a lot of people, I think, are just going to be denial and like, oh, it's never going to affect me. But if you're embracing it and saying like, I'm going to be ahead of it, I'm going to be right. Like that to me is a great strategy.
It's hard because it's changing so fast. But I'm borrowing a lot of content from some really smart friends of mine. I have a friend who's a futurist, and so I'm constantly asking him, what's next? What's going on? It is scary, don't get me wrong, but if you can really dig into it, it can also be really exciting and fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was going to ask you too, like you mentioned in the beginning, like your first client traveling, you jumped on the plane, your daughter, all that kind of good stuff that back when the business was starting. Now we went through the pandemic where everything kind of went remote. and people were not, you mentioned offline, I think, that you like traveling and jumping on the plane kind of stuff. How important, and sort of related to AI, as we become more automated and less in person with each other, how much of an importance do you still see in that sort of travel, the seeing people face to face, pitching clients in person, partners, industry peers, vendors, whatever it might be, just being in front of them?
So I personally think getting on a plane or traveling is potential. I love it. It gives me energy. I get really excited about meeting people in person. I think they can see that I'm genuine when we're meeting. I really want to learn what some of their challenges are and how partnerships can solve those problems. And I think when you have that in-person time, it helps. But having said that, since the pandemic, I think we've all learned it can be done all online and it can be done all virtually. So I would say our travel has shrunk dramatically, but I still find it to be very important. I also want to be conscious of my footprint, right? I mean, 20 years ago, I was on a plane almost every day. And now it's very rare. And we're trying to be really smart about it. If we go to a conference, we call clients and invite them to the conference, or we meet with clients that are in that area. So we're not jumping on a plane for individual meetings, right? Speaking engagements also help. And then posting and promoting the speaking engagements digitally also helps. But I am a big fan of in person. As a matter of fact, last night I was at an event. I have a handful of very cool business owner and smart women that I spend some time with. And we started a group months and months ago called Ambitio. And again, it was supposed to be tongue in cheek because we all are ambitious. And the whole idea is we wanted to bring more and more people together that weren't afraid of being ambitious. So the two things to get invited to one of our cocktail parties is you have to be ambitious and you have to be generous. These parties have sort of taken on a life of their own. But again, it's that in-person event where we can spend that time together and you get energy from each other. And we very rarely talk about work. We usually talk about all these other interesting, cool things that you're doing outside of work where you can connect with people. And for me, that's really important. So I hope I can always jump on a plane and do some cool conferences, but trying to, again, be respectful of my footprint. It's tricky. It's like a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, you did touch on that just a second ago. Other women, mentoring, aspiring professionals, probably a soft spot in your heart, right? Like to give back to people. How important now you being, in this business for the time you've been and being able to sort of, again, be a mentor to others. Like, is that something you feel like I want to do now, or that's a rewarding part of where your experience you could share?
100%. I mean, I would not be where I am if it wasn't for all the women that I feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. Is that the right expression? I still am really good friends with women who I admired when I worked, in my very first jobs. I still keep in touch with them. I still ask them for advice, and they will give it to me. I mean, I remember one of my conversations with a former boss of mine when I was telling her about this big presentation I was doing, and she was asking me about my pricing strategy. And when I told her, she looked at me and she goes, "You have to double it." And I was thinking, "Are you crazy? Like, I can't, how do you just double it?" And she goes, "Okay, don't do it on this one, but the very next presentation, your pitch, I want you to double that number." And so I was like, I left the meeting and was thinking, who does she think she is? But I did it and I won it. And so I called her to say, you know what? I needed to be pushed. That was unbelievable. And she goes, double it again. And I'm not remotely kidding. It was like a kick in the teeth. And at the same time, I was so thankful that I had someone that wasn't afraid to say, your pricing's not where it needs to be. And that was when I was starting out. And so I think now how much money she made me because I changed all my pricing. So think about over the time of owning Envision, it was all because of her pushing me. Right. So I like to do that for women. And I'm just so grateful for all the people that have come before me generationally. I mean, I think of my mom when I asked her why she was a nurse. I remember her answer was, my only options were nursing or teaching. She felt like if she wanted to have a job, those were her only choices. And because she took the job and climbed through the corporate ladder, and really made her mark and encouraged all of her daughters to do what they wanted to do. We weren't as afraid. But I have these just amazing role models. And so I aspire to do that for other women in any way I can. And oftentimes it's me saying, let me see your pricing. Right? Yeah, let's take a look at that. Or how many hours are you spending on that? Because you're only getting paid for 10, And it's just holding up a mirror and encouraging. But
Yeah. I was gonna say you're like literally paying it forward.
right, it's 100%. I mean, aren't we all? That's sort of the legacy is how can I help others? How can I help them grow? I love it. That brings me so much joy.
Yeah, the giving back, especially when you can, right? Because you put in the time, you put in the hard work, and proved your worth, and now you can kind of share that and give that to others, and hopefully they follow the same path, right?
That's the goal. That's the goal. And usually people asking for help want it. If they're looking for a mentor or they're asking for advice, is they want someone to say the hard thing and tell them what they think they need to hear.
Yeah, and I think for people listening, that is an important takeaway. Like, you have to ask sometimes. It's like people who can mentor you don't necessarily know that you even are open to it or need it, but there are many that are willing to give it. Yet sometimes you just have to ask.
Yeah, and that's the hardest thing. Sometimes it's really scary to ask, but I tell you, most people want to help. Most people want to help. And if they don't have the answer, hopefully they can introduce you to somebody that can.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not a female women question, but you have a quote hottie hockey husband and 2 kids. Which you touched on him in the beginning, I was kind of curious, like the fact that you've again started this business. To me, that's still the most poignant part, like that you started this to spend more time with your daughter. Like that's huge because that sounds like me. And that's like sort of impacted, like how has that impacted your life? Looking back saying like, obviously you wouldn't think that was the wrong decision, but it's still trying to create that balance. Even though you're home, some people might feel like I'm home, but I'm sort of like disconnected because I'm working. So how do you, again, having that business from Columbus, right, are able to kind of have that work-life balance with the family?
I think most moms would agree there's really no balance. Like it's a real hard juggle. I will say this, I never imagined myself being an entrepreneur. I really imagined myself always working in a huge corporation. That's sort of where I thought my place would be. But looking back, I'm so grateful that I was able to start Envision and be a mom and also grow a company. The beauty of doing what I did was, I mean, my kids have been everywhere. They've been to Europe a couple times. I've taken them with me on so many business meetings. And if people only knew, my mom would jump on a plane and I mean, they've been everywhere to all the big clients. Clients just didn't always know. But yeah, I took my kids with me and it was, I mean, I think it was so good for them, but it was better for me. I loved everything about it. It enabled me to, have that time and enjoy the time with them. But it also, I think, in some ways, made me a much better employer because I know the value of spending time with your family. I am really comfortable with people working random hours. Sometimes, you have to be somewhere at a certain time, or if there's a conference or something, you have to show up. But for the most part, if you're doing a good job, I know it. And so the time that you're there, it doesn't matter if it's around your kid's schedule. I mean, I was telling someone once that there was the first year my son started school, and the bus dropped him off at the opposite end of our block. So it was like a quarter-mile walk. And I would drive my car to the bus stop and wait for so I would leave work at 3, drive to my son's bus stop. And when he get off the bus, there's a window of time where he would talk and he would stop talking. So and so the teacher said this. And then as soon as we got to the front door, he would say, I want to play my video games or I'm hungry. And then all the talking would stop. So I would drive there on every nice day and like block it off my calendar because I knew that in that 15 minutes we would connect and I could hear everything that happened during his day. And then I would drop him off with the nanny and he could go play his video games and she would play games with him. That time for me was so magical because it was like the most important time for me to capture what happened with him at school. And I wanted that selfishly. I wanted that time with him. And I'll never forget that. I mean, I just think of how fortunate I am that I had that those memories and experience, because if I came home from work, if it was rainy and I couldn't meet him or I had a business meeting, I would never get that information from him. You know, at the dinner table, he's not going to go on and on about his teacher or what so and so said or who got in trouble. You don't get any of that, right? It's that magic moment. It's that magic moment. So I just feel very fortunate for my situation.
Yeah, no, looking back on that, compounding all that time every week over the year, it's like you'll look back and be like, that was just the best time ever.
That was that those were the key moments. And I think most moms would agree. Like there's really only certain moments in the day where you get that time with your kids, and if you miss that time, you don't get it back.
No, that's time. Yep, exactly. It's take it or leave it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What about shifting to your professional growth, right? Like most rewarding thing in this journey you've had so far in starting Envision, what would you say that is?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. Most rewarding with Envision is probably being able, well, first to be a mom. I think that's probably the most important thing for me. Also, I think it would be giving back to my team. I really enjoy working with smart people, working with fun people. I like to work. It brings me joy. I think that's probably the most rewarding thing is I'm able to do something that I enjoy doing, and I'm constantly learning, and I can hand off the things I hate or that I shouldn't be doing. Right? I can pass those along. So I think from a professional standpoint, maybe it's just the evolution of the position. I think you never want to be bored. You don't want to get stagnant. I mean, you want to get better and better at what you do. And I think being in this position, it's enabled me to do that.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's just just going the journey itself is rewarding, right? Just being on it. How about for people who want to connect with you? Like where's the best place to find you? Is it your website? I'll put it on the show notes, of course, but you personally, LinkedIn maybe?
Yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place to get a hold of me. Bridget Murphy at Envision Promotions. Envision with an E, so it's Envision Promotions is probably the best place to get a hold of me. But the website connects to all of those things. Like there's a way to connect with us on the website, connect to all the LinkedIn profiles, our business profile, all of that fun stuff. You can get their website or LinkedIn.
Yeah, cool. Listen, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your story.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for sharing your story with everyone. And we will be in touch. And, everyone check out Bridget and Envision Promotions. And thanks again for your time. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of Experience Curve. Please take the time to share this podcast with a friend or colleague to help get the word out about my show.